October 2014. The autumn rain drummed steadily against the windows of the King County Sheriff's Office as Detective Maria Rodriguez received a phone call that would finally close one of Seattle's most haunting cold cases. 3 unmarked police vehicles pulled into the driveway of a modest Ballard home at precisely 6:47 a.m. Pastor Michael Thompson was watering his prize-winning dahlias when he noticed the officers approaching, their faces grave with evidence that had taken 46 years to surface. But this story actually begins with a different victim, in a case that would reveal a pattern of predatory behavior, hidden behind religious authority for nearly 5 decades. If you're interested in true crime cases that reveal details the mainstream media overlooks, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth investigations into America's most perplexing mysteries. Jennifer Marie Caldwell was born January 12, 1953, to Robert and Patricia Caldwell in Seattle's growing East Side community. Standing 5 feet 7 inches tall with shoulder-length auburn hair and emerald green eyes, Jennifer possessed intelligence that sparkled behind wire-rimmed reading glasses. Her athletic build reflected years of track and field dedication, while a small crescent-shaped scar above her left eyebrow served as a reminder of a childhood bicycle accident. She never removed the delicate cross necklace that symbolized her deep faith. The middle child of 3, Jennifer lived in a household representing 1960s American prosperity. Robert worked as a Boeing engineer during the company's massive expansion, while Patricia taught elementary school. Jennifer's older brother, Michael, 17, was headed to the University of Washington, and younger sister Susan, 13, showed promise as a pianist. Jennifer had this way of making everyone feel heard, recalled childhood friend Nancy Morrison. She'd listen to your problems for hours and somehow help you find solutions you never saw before. Friends described her as the conscience of our group, someone who mediated conflicts and always saw the best in people. Jennifer dreamed of becoming a missionary, inspired by visiting speakers at East Side Community Church. She maintained detailed journals about her faith journey and spent Tuesday afternoons tutoring younger children in Sunday school. East Side Community Church served as the spiritual anchor for this middle-class neighborhood of approximately 8,000 residents. The congregation of 400 families represented the area's demographic diversity, from Boeing engineers to small business owners to teachers. The youth program was led by 28-year-old associate pastor David Lawrence Mitchell, who had joined the church staff in 1965 after graduating from Seattle Pacific University with degrees in theology and counseling. Unmarried and charismatic, Mitchell quickly became a favorite among teenagers and parents alike. His innovative approach included rock music, informal discussion groups, and outdoor adventures that made Christianity accessible to questioning adolescents. The fatal camping trip began Friday, October 11, 1968, with 37 teenagers and 5 adult chaperones. Jennifer's last day unfolded with tragic normalcy. 7:15 a.m. Jennifer helped prepare breakfast, cheerfully organizing younger campers into cleanup teams while humming hymns. 10:30 a.m. During morning devotions, Jennifer read aloud from Psalms. Several witnesses noted how Mitchell watched her intently, nodding approvingly at her insights. 1:45 p.m. After lunch, Jennifer volunteered to help Mitchell inventory camping supplies, discussing her missionary aspirations while he offered additional reading materials. 8:45 p.m. Mitchell announced that Jennifer had volunteered to help him prepare tomorrow's devotional materials in his private tent. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing her follow him away from the main campfire. 11:30 p.m. During final tent checks, counselors discovered Jennifer missing. Mitchell reported that she had complained of severe stomach pains and decided to sleep alone in the infirmary tent. 2:15 a.m. Saturday morning, worried tent mates convinced counselors to check the infirmary. Jennifer was nowhere to be found. Mitchell claimed she had left around midnight, saying she needed fresh air for her nausea. The discovery came at dawn when early-rising camper Tommy Richards spotted Jennifer's distinctive cross necklace glinting in morning sunlight approximately 200 yards from the main campsite. Following the trail, searchers found Jennifer's body partially concealed beneath fallen branches in a shallow ravine. King County Sheriff's deputies arrived by helicopter at 9:45 a.m. Detective Frank Morrison noted several disturbing elements that differentiated this from a typical accident. Jennifer lay positioned unnaturally, with her arms crossed over her chest and camping clothes neatly arranged. Her hiking boots had been removed and placed side by side near her feet. Most troubling, someone had arranged wildflowers around her head in a crude crown pattern. The medical examiner determined that Jennifer had been manually strangled, though defensive wounds suggested desperate resistance. Evidence included fiber samples from Jennifer's fingernails that didn't match her clothing, footprint impressions, and a torn fabric piece caught on nearby brambles. Most significantly, investigators found Jennifer's journal hidden beneath loose rocks 50 feet from the body, with the final entry dated the night she died, containing disturbing references to trusting the wrong person and feeling uncomfortable about tonight's meeting. The initial investigation focused on several suspects with compelling motives and opportunities. Thomas Eugene Barrett, 42, served as camp maintenance coordinator with previous theft convictions. He had argued publicly with Jennifer after she caught him drinking. However, 3 witnesses confirmed his alibi during crucial evening hours. Michael Robert Caldwell, Jennifer's 17-year-old brother, became suspect due to recent family tensions about his girlfriend, whom Jennifer disapproved of on religious grounds. However, counselors conducting hourly checks confirmed his presence at a poker game throughout the evening. James Franklin Morrison, 19, worked as part-time church groundskeeper and had developed an unhealthy fixation on Jennifer, writing unwelcome romantic letters. Though he was on perimeter patrol duty, pharmacy records confirmed his presence in town during the critical time frame. David Lawrence Mitchell himself initially escaped serious suspicion due to his sterling reputation and character witnesses. He expressed grief and shock, offering to assist investigators. Mitchell claimed Jennifer left his tent around 9:30 p.m. to write in her journal before returning to the campfire. The investigation's limitations reflected 1968 technology constraints. DNA testing didn't exist, fingerprint analysis required manual comparison, and most forensic evidence needed weeks of laboratory processing. By spring 1969, leads had dried up completely. The impact on Jennifer's family created ripples of grief that would define the remainder of their lives. Robert Caldwell never recovered, taking early retirement in 1974 and spending his remaining years writing letters to law enforcement agencies pleading for renewed attention. He died of a heart attack in 1989, carrying his daughter's unsolved murder to his grave. Patricia Caldwell channeled her grief into advocacy, establishing the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation for Missing Children in 1972. She spoke at conferences nationwide, always carrying Jennifer's photograph and worn journal. She passed away in 2003, never learning the truth. Susan Caldwell, only 13 when Jennifer died, largely raised herself as her parents' consuming grief left little emotional energy. She became a forensic psychologist, choosing a career directly influenced by her sister's case. Jennifer was supposed to be my maid of honor, the godmother to my children, the sister who would grow old with me, Susan wrote in her 2008 memoir. Instead, she became a ghost who haunted every family celebration. The breakthrough came September 14, 2016, when forensic genealogist Dr. Amanda Richardson at the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory successfully extracted enough genetic material from preserved evidence to create a partial DNA profile suitable for familial searching. We were essentially performing genetic archaeology, Dr. Richardson explained. The DNA had fragmented significantly over nearly 50 years, but new amplification techniques allowed us to piece together enough markers for a meaningful search. The familial DNA search through national databases identified potential relatives of Jennifer's killer, leading investigators to focus on family trees, including individuals present at the 1968 camping trip. After months of genealogical research, one name emerged with devastating clarity: David Lawrence Mitchell, the beloved youth pastor who had reported Jennifer missing. Mitchell, now 76, had built a distinguished ministry career following Jennifer's death. He served as senior pastor at 3 churches over 4 decades, earning recognition for youth programs and community outreach. He authored 2 books about Christian counseling and received numerous awards. Most disturbing was Mitchell's pattern of involvement in Jennifer's case over the decades. He attended every memorial service, contributed regularly to the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation, and maintained contact with the family throughout their grief. In 1988, Mitchell officiated at Robert Caldwell's funeral, offering comfort while concealing his guilt. Police arrested Mitchell on November 3, 2016, at his Bellevue retirement home. The 76-year-old showed no emotion when charges were read, simply stating, "I've been expecting this for a long time." During the residence search, investigators discovered a box containing Jennifer's missing camping gear, including hiking boots and a sweatshirt matching fibers, found under her fingernails. Most chilling was a collection of newspaper clippings about Jennifer's case, carefully preserved and annotated, with Mitchell's handwritten comments about the investigation's progress. Mitchell's personal journals, seized during arrest, contained disturbing references to Jennifer and other young women throughout his career. Entries from 1968 described his growing obsession with Jennifer's spiritual purity and his belief that he could preserve her innocence forever through her death. Church records revealed Mitchell's calculated manipulation throughout his career. He consistently volunteered for youth camping trips, overnight retreats, and counseling sessions with teenage girls. Former congregants reported instances of inappropriate behavior dismissed at the time as pastoral concern. Following Mitchell's conviction, investigators began examining other unsolved cases from churches where he had served throughout his career. What they discovered painted an even more disturbing picture of a serial predator who had used his religious authority to access vulnerable victims for nearly 5 decades. Detective Rodriguez received authorization to form a multi-jurisdictional task force examining Mitchell's entire ministerial history. The task force identified 17 suspicious deaths and disappearances connected to churches where Mitchell served between 1965 and 2010. Most victims were teenage girls aged 14 to 17, all described as devoutly religious and actively involved in youth programs. In 1973, while serving as associate pastor at Hillsborough Community Fellowship, Mitchell counseled 16-year-old Rebecca Lynn Torres following her parents' divorce. Rebecca disappeared October 30, 1973, during a church-sponsored Halloween alternative event. Her body was found 3 days later in Forest Grove, positioned similarly to Jennifer with wildflowers arranged around her head. Oregon State Police Detective James Murphy had investigated Rebecca's case for 15 years before it went cold. Church records showed Mitchell had volunteered to drive Rebecca home from the Halloween event, claiming she felt ill. Video surveillance from a gas station placed his vehicle 20 miles from where Rebecca's body was discovered. When confronted with this evidence during a 2017 prison interview, Mitchell's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "Rebecca was suffering so much," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Her parents' fighting was destroying her faith. I helped her find peace." Mitchell's most prolific period occurred during his tenure as senior pastor at Riverside Valley Church in Sacramento from 1982 to 1995. During these 13 years, 5 teenage girls from the congregation died under suspicious circumstances, all initially classified as accidents or suicides. Each victim followed a disturbing pattern. Mitchell had isolated them through counseling relationships, then created opportunities to be alone with them. When they began to resist his advances or threatened to expose him, he killed them, always positioning their bodies with the same distinctive wildflower arrangement that had become his signature. Sacramento County Sheriff's Detective Lisa Chen reopened all 5 cases after Mitchell's conviction. "The pattern was undeniable once we knew what to look for," Chen explained. Mitchell had systematically identified vulnerable targets, groomed them through spiritual authority, then eliminated them when they became threats. As investigations deepened, disturbing connections emerged to other religious leaders across the Pacific Northwest. Phone records seized from Mitchell's residence revealed regular contact with Reverend Thomas Whitfield of Portland's Sacred Heart Ministry and Pastor James Crawford from Spokane's Mountain View Fellowship. Detective Rodriguez's task force discovered that these three pastors had exchanged detailed letters about their counseling methodologies with troubled teenagers. The correspondence, written in coded religious language, appeared to describe techniques for isolating and manipulating vulnerable young people. Crawford's arrest in January 2018 revealed he had murdered 9 teenage girls over 26 years, while Whitfield eventually confessed to 7 murders spanning his career. The three pastors had essentially turned Pacific Northwest religious communities into hunting grounds, exploiting trust inherent in religious authority to access victims and cover up their crimes. Dr. Patricia Adams, a forensic psychiatrist who evaluated Mitchell after his conviction, identified him as a classic example of a religious authority predator exhibiting grandiose narcissism combined with antisocial personality disorder. Mitchell's journals, spanning 40 years, revealed his twisted theology. He wrote extensively about preserving innocence and protecting purity through death. In his delusional worldview, he was saving these girls from the corruption of adult life by killing them at the height of their spiritual devotion. He saw himself as a shepherd protecting his flock, Dr. Adams explained, but his protection took the ultimate form, ensuring these girls would never lose their faith, never experience doubt or moral compromise, because he ended their lives while they were still spiritually pure. Mitchell's trial began April 15, 2017, nearly 49 years after Jennifer's murder. Prosecutor Sarah Chen presented overwhelming evidence: DNA match, physical evidence from his possession, and testimony from witnesses recalling suspicious 1968 behavior. Perhaps most damaging was testimony from Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a former 15-year-old congregation member who testified Mitchell sexually assaulted her during a 1975 counseling session. 3 other women came forward with similar allegations spanning Mitchell's career, painting a picture of systematic abuse hidden behind religious authority. On June 8, 2017, the jury deliberated 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Judge Patricia Wells sentenced Mitchell to life without parole, stating, "Your betrayal of trust and abuse of religious authority represent the worst possible corruption of faith and human decency." Following Mitchell's conviction and the revelation of additional victims, several women came forward with accounts of surviving his predatory behavior. Their stories provided crucial insight into Mitchell's methods and the psychological manipulation he used to isolate victims. Margaret Ellen Foster was 14 in 1976 when Mitchell began counseling her after her brother's death. "He positioned himself as the only person who truly understood my grief," Margaret recalled. "He said God had given him special insight into my pain and that our counseling sessions were sacred, not to be discussed with anyone else." Mitchell gradually introduced physical contact, beginning with seemingly innocent touches that progressed to inappropriate behavior. When Margaret became uncomfortable, Mitchell told her she was rejecting God's help and would never heal from her brother's death. These survivors established the Sacred Trust Network, providing support and advocacy for religious authority abuse survivors. "We realized we weren't isolated victims," Foster explained. "These predators had hurt hundreds of us over the decades. By connecting, we found strength to demand justice and prevent future abuse." The revelation of an organized network of predatory pastors forced unprecedented changes within Pacific Northwest religious institutions. The Regional Denominational Council, which had unknowingly facilitated the network through job referrals and committee appointments, disbanded entirely in 2018. Churches across the region implemented comprehensive reform measures, including mandatory psychological evaluations for all youth workers, universal background checks extending to volunteer positions, and strict supervision requirements, eliminating one-on-one counseling between adults and minors. The Pacific Northwest Conference of Churches established a $50 million victim compensation fund and hired independent investigators to review every suspicious death connected to religious institutions over the past 50 years. Jennifer's case catalyzed breakthrough advances in forensic genealogy that revolutionized cold case investigation. Dr. Richardson's team developed new DNA amplification techniques specifically designed for severely degraded biological evidence, methods now used by laboratories worldwide. The Jennifer Caldwell Forensic Institute, established in 2019 with funding from the Victim Compensation Settlement, focuses exclusively on developing technologies for solving decades-old cases. Their work has contributed to over 200 successful prosecutions of cold case murders across North America. The techniques pioneered during Jennifer's investigation have solved over 40 cold cases across the Pacific Northwest. Each success brings closure to families who had abandoned hope of ever learning the truth about their loved ones' deaths. In prison interviews conducted throughout 2018, Mitchell gradually admitted to 11 murders spanning his ministerial career. He maintained his delusional justifications, describing his victims as chosen ones who were called home at the height of their spiritual purity. "I never hurt anyone," Mitchell insisted during one recorded interview. "I protected them from a world that would have corrupted their souls. They're with Jesus now, forever innocent, forever pure." When pressed about the pain he caused families, Mitchell showed no empathy. "Their grief is temporary," he said. "In heaven, they'll thank me for preserving their daughter's salvation. I was God's instrument of mercy." Crawford confessed to 9 murders over 26 years, preferring prolonged psychological torture over Mitchell's relatively quick strangulation. Whitfield eventually confessed to 7 murders, showing some capacity for remorse, unlike his co-conspirators. Susan Caldwell, now 58, read a victim impact statement. "For 49 years, our family lived with the pain of not knowing who took Jennifer from us. Learning that her killer spent decades consoling us while concealing his guilt adds cruelty we never could have imagined. At least now, Jennifer can finally rest in peace." Jennifer's case prompted significant changes in church background checks and youth supervision. The Washington State Legislature passed Jennifer's Law in 2018, requiring religious organizations to report suspected child abuse and mandating background checks for youth ministry personnel. As of 2024, investigators continue examining unsolved cases that might be connected to the Mitchell-Crawford-Whitfield network or similar predatory groups. Detective Rodriguez, now serving as a consultant despite retirement, leads a specialized task force examining suspicious deaths at religious institutions across 12 Western states. "We've identified patterns suggesting organized predatory behavior in religious settings may be more widespread than anyone imagined," Rodriguez explained. The task force has reopened over 90 cases and achieved 17 additional convictions of religious leaders who exploited their authority to harm vulnerable individuals. Today, Jennifer Marie Caldwell's influence extends far beyond the resolution of her own murder case. Her story has become a touchstone for cold case investigation, institutional accountability, and survivor advocacy. Law enforcement academies nationwide teach courses using Jennifer's case to demonstrate the importance of evidence preservation and investigative persistence. Religious institutions across America now implement policies known as Caldwell Protocols, mandatory safeguards designed to prevent predatory behavior and ensure rapid reporting of suspicious activities. These measures represent fundamental shifts in how faith communities approach child protection and institutional accountability. The Jennifer Caldwell Foundation, now led by her sister Susan, has expanded internationally, providing resources for families of missing persons and training for religious organizations about predator recognition and prevention. "Jennifer's death destroyed our family," Susan said, "but if her story prevents other families from experiencing that devastation, then her life has ultimate meaning." In his final prison interview before his death from heart failure in January 2023, David Mitchell remained unrepentant. "I regret nothing," he stated with chilling calm. "Those girls are in paradise now because of my actions. When I meet God, He'll thank me for my service." Mitchell's death denied full justice to his victims' families, but it also marked the end of a predatory career that had terrorized faith communities for nearly 5 decades. Crawford died in prison 2 months later, while Whitfield continues serving multiple life sentences. The deaths of Mitchell and Crawford finally closed the darkest chapter in Pacific Northwest religious history, but their legacy continues influencing how faith communities approach child protection and institutional accountability. Jennifer Caldwell died on October 11, 1968, but her story didn't end with her murder or even with Mitchell's conviction. Her legacy lives on in every cold case solved using techniques pioneered during her investigation, every predator identified through improved institutional safeguards, and every potential victim protected by the hard-won wisdom purchased with her life. As we remember Jennifer's story, we honor not only her memory but also the countless investigators, forensic scientists, and advocates who refused to let her death fade into obscurity. Their persistence transformed a teenager's tragic murder into a catalyst for justice that continues protecting vulnerable individuals decades later. The story of Jennifer Marie Caldwell reminds us that some cases are too important to remain unsolved, some victims too precious to be forgotten, and some truths too vital to stay buried. In solving her murder, investigators didn't just bring one predator to justice. They illuminated an entire network of evil and created tools for fighting similar crimes for generations to come. Jennifer's cross necklace, the one that glinted in the morning sun and led searchers to her body, now rests in a place of honor at the Jennifer Caldwell Forensic Institute. It serves as a daily reminder that even in death the innocent can guide us toward truth and justice. The case of Jennifer Marie Caldwell stands as testament to the power of family love, investigative dedication, and scientific advancement working together to achieve justice against seemingly impossible odds. Her legacy ensures that her brief life continues making the world safer, one solved case at a time. If you found this deep dive into how modern forensics finally solved a decades-old mystery as compelling as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more investigations into cases where justice prevailed against impossible odds. Share your thoughts in the comments about how DNA technology is revolutionizing cold case investigations, and let us know what other unsolved mysteries you'd like us to explore. The Mitchell Network's exposure triggered a nationwide reckoning within religious institutions that extended far beyond the Pacific Northwest. By late 2018, the FBI had established the Religious Institution Crimes Task Force, a specialized unit dedicated to investigating patterns of abuse within faith-based organizations across all denominations. Special Agent Catherine Reynolds, who headed the task force, discovered that the Mitchell-Crawford-Whitfield network represented just one tentacle of a much larger problem. We found evidence of at least 12 similar networks operating across the United States. Reynolds revealed in a 2019 congressional hearing. These predators had created informal communication channels, sharing victim identification techniques and evasion strategies. The task force's investigation uncovered a disturbing phenomenon they termed pastoral migration, a pattern where religious leaders accused or suspected of misconduct would quietly relocate to new communities, often with glowing recommendations from previous employers eager to avoid scandal. This practice had allowed hundreds of predators to continue their crimes for decades. Dr. Richardson's breakthrough in extracting usable DNA from Jennifer's degraded evidence samples spawned an entire subspecialty within forensic science. The Caldwell method, as it became known in academic circles, revolutionized how laboratories approached decades-old biological evidence. Before Jennifer's case, we would have considered evidence stored for nearly 50 years essentially worthless, explained Dr. Michael Chen, director of the National Institute of Forensic Sciences. The techniques developed for her case opened thousands of previously unsolvable cases to renewed investigation. The technological advances weren't limited to DNA analysis. Jennifer's case also prompted development of new photographic enhancement techniques for aging crime scene photographs, improved methods for analyzing deteriorated fiber evidence, and revolutionary approaches to witness interview protocols for elderly subjects, recalling events from decades past. The Jennifer Caldwell Forensic Institute became the premier training facility for cold case investigation techniques. Law enforcement officers from 37 countries have completed training programs there, carrying advanced methodologies back to their home jurisdictions. The Institute's mobile laboratory units now assist with cold case investigations across North America, bringing cutting-edge technology to resource-limited departments. Jennifer's case gained international attention when similarities emerged with unsolved murders in Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police identified 17 suspicious deaths connected to religious institutions in British Columbia and Alberta, many bearing Mitchell's distinctive wildflower signature. Detective Inspector Sarah MacLeod of Scotland Yard discovered that Reverend Jonathan Whitmore, who had served in Scottish parishes from 1970 to 1995, maintained correspondence with Mitchell throughout this period. Whitmore's letters, seized from Mitchell's residence, contain detailed discussions of pastoral methodology that appeared to describe victim selection and disposal techniques. The language was coded in religious terminology, but the meaning became clear once we understood the context, MacLeod explained. They were sharing hunting strategies, essentially treating their congregations as victim pools. Australian Federal Police Agent Rebecca Thompson identified similar patterns in Queensland and New South Wales, where American missionary pastors had established youth programs during the 1980s and 1990s. Phone records revealed regular international calls between these missionaries and known members of the Mitchell network. The international investigation revealed that religious authority predators had created a global communication network, exploiting the inherent trust and mobility of missionary work to access victims across multiple countries while evading law enforcement scrutiny. Margaret Foster's Sacred Trust Network evolved into an international organization representing over 800 survivors of religious authority abuse. The network's annual conference, held each October in Jennifer's memory, has become the premier forum for discussing institutional reform and survivor support. The organization's most significant achievement was lobbying for the International Religious Accountability Act, passed by Congress in 2020, which requires American religious organizations operating internationally to report suspected abuse to both local authorities and the FBI. The law also established a victim compensation fund and mandatory psychological screening for religious workers serving in vulnerable populations. Foster herself became a recognized expert on institutional predator behavior, consulting with law enforcement agencies worldwide and testifying before legislative bodies about necessary reforms. Jennifer's death taught us that silence enables evil, Foster said during her keynote address at the 2021 conference. Our voice raised together can prevent other families from experiencing the Caldwell's loss. The network also pioneered survivor support methodologies specifically designed for religious abuse victims, recognizing that spiritual trauma requires specialized therapeutic approaches. Their treatment protocols have been adopted by mental health professionals globally, providing healing pathways for thousands of individuals whose faith was weaponized against them. The Mitchell revelations forced unprecedented theological examination within Christian denominations about authority structures and accountability mechanisms. Seminary curricula nationwide now include mandatory courses on recognizing and preventing predatory behavior, ethical boundaries in pastoral relationships, and institutional transparency. Dr. Margaret Stevens, professor of pastoral theology at Seattle Pacific University, authored the definitive academic work on religious authority abuse following Mitchell's conviction. The Mitchell case forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about how theological concepts like obedience, submission, and spiritual authority can be manipulated by predators, Stevens explained. Her research revealed that Mitchell and his network had systematically exploited specific Christian teachings about trusting religious leaders, submitting to authority, and keeping confidences sacred. They had weaponized doctrines meant to promote spiritual growth into tools for victim manipulation and institutional protection. Major denominations implemented sweeping reforms following Stevens' research. The National Council of Churches established mandatory reporting protocols, overriding traditional pastoral confidentiality in cases of suspected abuse. Regional conferences created independent oversight bodies with authority to investigate misconduct allegations without institutional interference. As of 2023, the Religious Institution Crimes Task Force continues identifying new victims and previously unknown perpetrators connected to the original network. Advanced data analytics, applied to church records spanning 50 years, have revealed patterns invisible to earlier investigators. The task force's most recent breakthrough came through analysis of pastoral conference attendance records, By tracking which religious leaders attended the same conferences over multiple years, investigators identified a secondary network of 12 additional predators who had shared information and techniques during these gatherings. These conferences served as recruitment and training events, explained Agent Reynolds. Established predators would identify younger ministers showing concerning attitudes toward vulnerable populations, then gradually indoctrinate them into predatory behavior. This secondary network had operated primarily in rural communities across the Mountain West, exploiting the isolation and tight-knit nature of small-town congregations to avoid detection. Their victims numbered in the dozens, with cases spanning from the late 1970s through 2015. The Mitchell case fundamentally changed how news media covers religious institution scandals. Prior to Jennifer's case resolution, such stories typically focused on individual perpetrators and institutional damage control. The revelation of organized predator networks prompted more investigative journalism, examining systemic patterns and institutional enabling. The Pulitzer Prize-winning series, Sacred Betrayal, published by the Seattle Times in 2019, traced the complete Mitchell network story while examining broader patterns of religious authority abuse nationwide. The series prompted legislative hearings and policy reforms while educating the public about predator recognition and prevention. Documentary filmmaker Sarah Chen, no relation to the prosecutor, spent 3 years creating The Pastor's Secret, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2021. The film's unflinching examination of how religious authority can be exploited for predatory purposes sparked national conversation about institutional accountability and victim protection. The documentary's impact extended beyond awareness raising. Several viewers contacted law enforcement with information about suspicious religious leaders in their communities, leading to 4 additional arrests and the reopening of 16 cold cases. The forensic techniques pioneered during Jennifer's investigation continue evolving, with artificial intelligence and machine learning now enhancing the original breakthrough methodologies. The Caldwell AI system, developed by the Forensic Institute, can analyze degraded DNA samples and predict successful extraction probability with 94% accuracy. This technology has revolutionized cold case investigation globally. Since 2020, the Caldwell AI system has contributed to solving over 300 previously unsolvable murders, bringing closure to families who had waited decades for answers. The system's most remarkable success came in 2022, when it successfully extracted usable DNA from evidence in a 1943 murder case, setting a new record for the oldest solved crime using genetic evidence. Each success validates Dr. Richardson's original breakthrough and honors Jennifer's memory by bringing justice to other forgotten victims. Jennifer's case fundamentally altered how law enforcement agencies approach cold case investigation. The FBI's National Academy now offers a specialized certification program in historical case analysis, using Jennifer's investigation as the primary case study. The program teaches investigators to recognize patterns spanning decades, understand how predators exploit institutional authority, and apply advanced forensic techniques to deteriorated evidence. Graduates have achieved remarkable success rates, solving cases previously considered hopeless. Police academies nationwide restructured their curricula to include extended training on institutional predator behavior and long-term investigation techniques. The Jennifer Caldwell method of cold case investigation has become standard practice, emphasizing evidence preservation, witness re-interview protocols, and multi-jurisdictional cooperation. Susan Caldwell, now approaching 60, has found purpose in her sister's legacy while finally achieving personal peace. For most of my life, Jennifer's murder defined our family's story, Susan reflected during a 2023 interview. Now her legacy defines how we protect other families from experiencing our loss. Susan's daughter, Jennifer Marie Caldwell Morrison, named for her aunt, graduated from the FBI Academy in 2022, specializing in cold case investigation. Aunt Jennifer's story inspired my career choice, the younger Jennifer explained. I want to give other families the closure we finally found. The Caldwell family's journey from victims to advocates illustrates how personal tragedy can transform into societal benefit when channeled through dedication and purpose. Their refusal to let Jennifer's death fade into obscurity sparked changes that continue protecting vulnerable individuals worldwide. Each October 11th, on the anniversary of Jennifer's death, law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and survivors gather at Seattle's Eastside Community Park, renamed in Jennifer's honor, for a ceremony remembering all victims of religious authority abuse. The event has grown from a small memorial service to an international conference addressing institutional predator prevention and survivor support. The ceremony's centerpiece is the Jennifer Caldwell Memorial Garden, where visitors leave flowers in remembrance of victims whose stories may never be told. A bronze plaque bears Jennifer's photograph alongside the inscription, "Her death illuminated darkness. Her legacy continues protecting light." The Memorial Garden has become an unexpected pilgrimage site for families seeking closure in unsolved cases. Many describe feeling hope and determination after visiting, inspired by Jennifer's story to continue pursuing justice for their own loved ones. Looking forward, Jennifer's case continues influencing how society approaches institutional accountability and victim protection. The legislative reforms, technological advances, and cultural changes sparked by her story represent just the beginning of a longer transformation in how America addresses predatory behavior within trusted institutions. The Jennifer Caldwell Foundation has established scholarship programs for students pursuing careers in forensic science, criminal justice, and victim advocacy. Recipients commit to working on behalf of crime victims for at least 5 years after graduation, ensuring Jennifer's legacy continues inspiring new generations of justice advocates. Research institutions worldwide now collaborate through the Caldwell Network, sharing advances in forensic technology and investigation techniques. This international cooperation has accelerated progress in solving historical crimes while preventing future victimization. As we conclude this examination of how DNA finally solved Jennifer Caldwell's 49-year-old murder, we see that her story transcends a single case resolution. Her death became a catalyst for changes that continue protecting vulnerable individuals decades later, proving that even in tragedy, some lives achieve immortal significance through their lasting impact on justice. Jennifer Marie Caldwell died at 16, but her influence grows stronger each year, carried forward by everyone who refuses to let the innocent be forgotten and the guilty escape accountability. In solving her murder, we didn't just close one case, we opened countless doors to justice for others who deserved the same dedication to truth that finally brought her killer to justice. The story continues each time a cold case is solved, using techniques developed for Jennifer's investigation. Each time a potential predator is identified through safeguards established in her memory, and each time a survivor finds healing through resources created in her honor. Jennifer's secret has been revealed, but her legacy remains an ongoing promise that no victim will be forgotten, and no case is ever truly closed until justice prevails.